barren woman cast out by her husband, until a Lakota warrior gave her 3 strong sons. Maria woke up early that morning, as she had many times before, to the soft gray light of dawn filtering through the small window of the house she once called home. The cold wind drifted across the empty fields outside, carrying the faint scent of the earth and the last traces of winter. But unlike other mornings, there was a tension in the air. She could feel deep inside her chest. She tried to brush it away, telling herself it was nothing, just another ordinary day. But ordinary days had become harder and harder to bear. For years Maria had lived with a quiet hope, a hope she could barely speak aloud. She had married young, full of dreams and love, believing that life would unfold like the stories her mother had told her, full of family, laughter, and children running through the house. But year after year, nothing came. Every hope of holding a child in her arms ended in silence. She had prayed, she had cried, and she had wondered endlessly why life had chosen this path for her. Her husband, a man named Daniel, had once been kind, even gentle. He had a sharp mind and a steady hand, and he had loved her in the early days of their marriage. But as the years passed, the absence of a child became a shadow over their home, creeping into every word, every glance, and every conversation. Where love had once been, now there was frustration. Where there had been laughter, now there was silence. And for Maria, each passing year felt like a small, quiet punishment. Daniel had begun to speak harshly to her in the evenings, his voice tight with impatience and disappointment. "Why can't you give me a child?" he asked one night, his eyes hard as stone. Maria had no answer. She had tried to explain that it was not her fault, that sometimes life did not follow the plans people made. But he would not listen, and with every unanswered question, every accusation, she felt the warmth of their home slipping away. It was not only the words that hurt, it was the look in his eyes. It was a mixture of frustration and blame, a silent reminder that she was failing in a role that society and her husband had expected her to fill. Maria tried to find comfort in small things, tending the garden, cooking meals, keeping the house in order. But even these gestures, once appreciated, were now met with indifference. She had become a ghost in her own home, a figure who existed but no longer mattered. "I can't do this anymore," he said. "I cannot live like this. You have failed in the only thing that matters." Maria froze, the broom still in her hands. She could not speak. She could not believe the words she had heard so many times before were now final. Daniel's face was hard, his jaw tight, and there was no softness in his tone. "Pack your things," he said. "You are leaving today." The words landed like stones in her chest. Maria had imagined being sent away in her dreams in moments of fear and despair, but hearing it spoken aloud made her knees shake. She wanted to plead, to explain, to beg for another chance, but the voice that had once whispered love now held only finality. Maria gathered what little she could carry in her arms, a small bundle of clothes, a thin blanket, and a few personal items. She looked around the house she had once loved, each room filled with memories of hope and loss. Her hands trembled as she held the bundle close, as if holding on to these items could somehow keep her tied to the life that had been taken from her. She felt the sting of tears behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of him. Pride, shame, and a quiet dignity kept her standing. Stepping outside, Maria felt the cold wind bite at her face. The village, her home, stretched before her, quiet and unfeeling. Neighbors passed by, some avoiding her eyes, others glancing with curiosity or judgment. The whispers followed her like shadows, voices carrying stories she did not want to hear, but could not escape. She was cast out, some said. It was her own fault. Maria did not stop. She did not speak. She simply walked, one step at a time, each footfall taking her farther from the home she had known and deeper into the unknown. She walked through fields and along narrow paths, past abandoned barns and quiet streams. The world outside her village was vast and indifferent, full of open skies and empty spaces. Maria had no destination in mind, no plan to guide her. All she had was the knowledge that she could not return. The thought was heavy in her chest. Where would she go? What would she eat? How would she survive? Each question was a thorn pressing into her mind, but still, she kept walking. The first night was the hardest. Maria found shelter under the branches of a large oak tree at the edge of a small clearing. She wrapped herself in her thin blanket and tried to sleep, but the cold and fear kept her awake. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying the distant sounds of animals and the faint noises of village life far away. Maria felt completely alone, a single figure against the vast darkness, her heart heavy with sadness and doubt. As the night deepened, Maria thought of her life before the pain. She remembered the early days of her marriage, the hope in her heart, and the dreams she had dared to dream. And though those dreams had been broken, a small spark remained inside her, a spark of resilience, of survival, of the quiet determination not to give up entirely. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew she could not collapse under the weight of sorrow. Days passed, each one filled with struggle and uncertainty. Maria learned to find food where she could, berries along the riverbank, roots in the soil, and fish caught in shallow streams. She discovered the strength in her own hands, the resilience of her body, and the quiet courage in her spirit. Each small victory, whether it was a meal found or a safe place to rest, built her confidence, slowly reminding her that she could survive. The villagers, too, became a distant memory, their whispers and judgment fading with each mile she put between herself and the home that had rejected her. She met strangers along the way, some kind and generous, offering water or a place to rest, others indifferent or wary. But Maria learned to accept help without shame and to move on when necessary. She discovered that the world was larger than the small boundaries of her village and that life could still offer opportunities even after loss. And yet, despite the small comforts, Maria's heart ached for the family she had not been able to have, for the home she had lost, and for the love that had turned to coldness. She carried these pains silently, a heavy burden that shaped each decision and guided each step she took. But beneath it all, a quiet determination began to grow. Maria realized that she would not allow despair to define her life. She would continue forward, seeking not revenge, not pity, but the chance to find her own place, her own family, her own life renewed. By the end of her first week on her own, Maria had learned that survival was not simply a matter of food or shelter, but of spirit. She had discovered a quiet strength within herself, a resilience that she had not known existed. Though she was still alone, still cast out, there was a sense of awakening, a feeling that life could still hold something for her if she dared to keep moving forward. And somewhere on the horizon beyond the forests and rivers, beyond the field she had crossed, Maria felt a small glimmer of hope, a hope that perhaps one day she would not be alone, that perhaps life could still surprise her, even after so much sorrow. Maria had been walking for several days, moving slowly but steadily through the open plains and wooded areas beyond her village. She carried with her only the small bundle of clothes, the thin blanket, and a few items that reminded her of her past life. Each step was a mixture of exhaustion and determination. Hunger came often, as did cold nights and the occasional heavy rain. But Maria had begun to grow stronger. Her body adapted to the long walks, her hands grew calloused, and her mind became sharper, aware of every sound, every movement in the woods and fields around her. One late afternoon, as she rested near the bank of a narrow river, she felt an unfamiliar presence. Maria had learned to be cautious. She had seen strangers passing through the plains before, some curious, some wary, and some who would have taken advantage of a woman alone. She stood quickly, brushing the dust from her clothes and gripping a sturdy stick she had picked up as a walking aid. Her eyes scanned the surrounding trees and the water, looking for movement, listening for sounds. From the shade of a tall oak, a figure stepped forward. He was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, with a calm and confident presence. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead, and his eyes were steady, observing her without judgment. Maria instinctively felt both caution and curiosity. She tightened her hold on her stick, ready to defend herself if needed, but the man's posture was relaxed, and he spoke in a calm, respectful voice. "You look tired," he said, his voice carrying easily over the sound of the flowing river. "You've been walking a long time. You should rest." Maria hesitated. She had learned to trust very few people, and even fewer had offered help without a hint of expectation or judgment. But something about the man's voice, the way he held himself, made her lower her stick slightly. I'm fine," she said softly, though the truth was very different. Her body ached, her stomach growled with hunger, and the weariness in her bones begged for a moment of rest. The man nodded, as if he understood without pressing further, and stepped closer, offering a small bundle of dried meat and fresh water. Maria's hands trembled as she accepted it. She had learned to survive, but the kindness was foreign, almost magical. "I'm Wakasa," he said, introducing himself. Maria nodded but did not speak her name at first. She was wary of sharing anything, yet the man's eyes held no judgment, no expectation, only attention and quiet understanding. Wakasa gestured to a small clearing nearby, where the ground was flat and dry. "You can rest here. You're safe." Maria looked around. The clearing was simple, open to the sky, with a few trees providing shade. It was a place she could see clearly, and she felt a small relief in having a spot to rest, at least for a little while. As she ate the food Wakasa had offered, Maria felt a strange sensation she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not complete peace, because her heart still carried the weight of her past, but a quiet reprieve from constant fear and hunger. Wakasa did not press questions. He simply waited, sitting a few feet away, giving her space while keeping a watchful eye. Maria appreciated this balance, respectful distance combined with a silent offer of protection. After finishing her meal, Maria leaned back against the trunk of a tree, feeling her muscles relax for the first time in days. The sun was low in the sky, casting golden light across the river, turning the water into a path of flickering fire. She looked at Wakasa, who had begun to prepare a small fire for the evening. He moved with care, gathering dry wood and arranging it in a careful pattern, making sure it would burn steadily. There was a quiet skill in everything he did, a sense of purpose and respect for the land around them. Maria felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity. Over the next few days, Maria and Wakasa began a slow rhythm together. He taught her ways to find clean water, which plants were safe to eat, and how to spot animals without startling them. He showed her how to read the movement of birds and the signs of changing weather. Maria absorbed every lesson, grateful for his guidance. She had survived on her own, but the knowledge Wakasa shared gave her confidence she had never felt. Each day her steps became surer, her eyes sharper, and her heart lighter. Maria began to trust him more, though she remained cautious. She told him bits of her story, not all because some wounds were too deep, too raw, but enough for Wakasa to understand that she had suffered greatly and had been cast out from her home. He listened without interruption, without judgment, offering only quiet understanding. His respect for her experiences created a space where Maria felt heard, a feeling she had not known in years. One evening, as the sky turned deep shades of purple and gold, Maria and Wakasa sat by the fire. The warmth of the flames contrasted with the cool evening air. Maria thought about her life before, about her home, her husband, and the dreams she had held. She allowed herself a few quiet tears, the first she had shed openly in months. Wakasa said nothing, simply handed her a piece of dried bread and waited. There was no rush, no need to explain, only the silent understanding that grief could be shared without words. Over time, their connection deepened. Wakasa was patient, never pushing Maria to do more than she could. He taught her how to prepare meals from the land, how to build a small shelter, and how to care for herself in ways she had never known. Maria felt her strength returning, not just physically, but in her spirit. She had learned to survive alone, but with Wakasa, she began to thrive. She discovered that life could still hold kindness and friendship, even after betrayal and loss. The bond between them grew naturally. They shared stories around the fire at night, speaking of hopes, of fears, and of lessons learned from the past. Maria spoke of her village, of the pain of being cast out, and Wakasa shared tales of his own people, of their traditions and the ways they honored life in the land. The evenings were filled with a gentle rhythm of conversation and silence. the kind that comes from mutual respect and growing trust. One day, as they walked along the river together, Wakasa stopped and pointed to the tracks of a deer in the mud. He showed Maria how to follow the tracks without disturbing the animal, how to anticipate its movement, and how to use her senses to understand the land. Maria watched carefully, noting each instruction. She realized that these lessons were about more than survival. They were about understanding the world, respecting it, and finding her place within it. Gradually, Maria felt a sense of belonging she had not known in years. The fear and shame she carried from her old life began to lessen. She laughed again, small but genuine, at moments of shared humor or triumph with Wakasa. She felt her body growing stronger, her movements more confident, and her mind more alert. She began to believe that life could still offer something beautiful, even after the pain she had endured. And then, one morning, Maria noticed a shift within herself. She felt hope stirring in her heart. Not the fragile, whispered hope of her youth, but a quiet, steady hope born from survival, learning, and trust. She realized that for the first time in years, she could imagine a future where she was not defined by her past pain, a future where she could build something new, something meaningful, with someone who respected and cared for her. Though she did not yet know what the future held, Maria felt a sense of peace. The fear that had once guided every step was replaced with cautious optimism. She had been lost, cast out, and alone. But now, with Wakasa by her side, she felt the possibility of safety, companionship, and perhaps even family. The plain stretched before her, wide and open, filled with challenges but also with opportunity. And for the first time, Maria felt that she was ready to face them. Maria had settled into a new rhythm of life with Wakasa. The days began with the rising sun, the light spilling across the plains, and ended with the fire casting warm glows over their small clearing. She woke each morning with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. Each day was full of activity, learning, and quiet victories. Maria felt stronger now, not only in body but in heart and mind. The fear that had once haunted her steps was slowly being replaced by confidence and a gentle sense of belonging. She learned quickly. Wakasa showed her how to fish in the shallow rivers, how to spot edible plants in the fields, and how to weave simple mats for sitting and sleeping. At first, the work was exhausting. Her muscles ached, and her hands were raw from carrying water and cutting wood. But she persisted, driven not only by survival but also by a growing desire to create a home, a space where she and Wakasa could live fully and safely. Each accomplishment, no matter how small, filled her with pride. Maria's mind, once consumed by grief and self-doubt, began to open to the possibility of joy. She laughed again, sometimes quietly to herself when she managed to catch fish or build a fire perfectly, and sometimes out loud when Wakasa told a story from his youth. Their evenings were filled with conversation, shared stories, and simple moments of companionship that Maria had long thought impossible. The trust and respect between them had grown steadily, like roots of a tree, hidden at first but now strong and enduring. One afternoon, as Maria and Wakasa walked along a narrow path through the tall grasses, Maria felt a strange, fluttering sensation in her chest. She stopped and turned to Wakasa, unsure how to describe it. He looked at her, concerned, and asked gently what was wrong. She shook her head, embarrassed. I don't know, she said softly. I just feel different. Wakasa nodded, understanding that life could bring unexpected changes. In the months that followed, Maria discovered that the change in her body was a blessing. She was pregnant. The realization brought a mixture of fear and joy. She had never been able to have children before, and the thought of carrying life within her filled her heart with hope she had thought lost forever. Wakasa was overjoyed, though careful to respect her strength and comfort. Together they prepared for the arrival of a child, learning how to care for a newborn, ensuring that Maria's health and the child's safety were prioritized. As her pregnancy progressed, Maria felt more connected to Wakasa and the life they were creating. They worked together to build a small, sturdy shelter near the river, using materials from the land, wood, reeds, and stones, to make a home that would protect them from wind, rain, and cold nights. Maria took great pride in her work, weaving mats and blankets, arranging their few belongings, and preparing a space for the child she would soon hold. Every task she completed reminded her that she was capable, that she could create something meaningful from the pieces of her past life. The months passed slowly but steadily. Maria grew stronger with each passing day, her movements careful but confident. She learned to read her body, to understand the rhythms of life, and to listen to the subtle signs that nature offered. Wakasa guided her gently, teaching her patience, care, and the quiet art of observation. Together they created a life that was both simple and rich, full of small joys that she had never expected to experience. When the day of the child's birth arrived, Maria felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had experienced disappointment in the past, and the fear of losing this opportunity was strong. But Wakasa stayed by her side, calm and steady, offering words of encouragement and support. The birth was difficult, as all births are, but Maria discovered a strength within herself she had not known existed. When she finally held her newborn son in her arms, a wave of love and gratitude swept over her. She had never felt anything so powerful, so complete. The child's cries filled the small shelter, and Maria responded instinctively, rocking him gently, speaking softly, and feeling a deep connection that transcended words. Wakasa helped with care and comfort, teaching Maria how to feed, hold, and soothe the baby. The days became a mix of work and tenderness, gathering food, maintaining the shelter, and attending to the needs of the child. Maria felt a sense of purpose she had never known before, a fulfillment that grew with each smile, each coo, and each small milestone. Over the next year, Maria gave birth to 2 more sons, each one a living testament to resilience, love, and the life she had built with Wakasa. The boys grew quickly, their personalities emerging like the first shoots of spring. Maria nurtured them with care, teaching them respect for their surroundings, the value of hard work, and the strength that came from facing life's challenges. Wakasa contributed his wisdom and skills, showing them how to fish, hunt, and understand the rhythms of nature. Together, they raised a family grounded in love, respect, and unity. Life was not without challenges. There were storms that battered the shelter, periods of scarce food, and moments when illness or fatigue threatened their well-being. But Maria and Wakasa faced each difficulty together, drawing strength from one another and from the small, resilient family they had created. Maria realized that hardship was a part of life, but it did not define her. What mattered was courage, perseverance, and the love that bound them together. As the children grew, Maria reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the nights of despair, the loneliness, and the fear that had once consumed her. She thought of the village that had cast her out, of the judgment and whispers that had followed her steps, and she realized that those painful experiences, though harsh, had led her to this new life, a life she had built with her own hands, with courage, and with the support of someone who saw her worth. The bond between Maria and Wakasa deepened with each passing year. Their relationship was built not only on affection, but on shared experience, trust, and mutual respect. They celebrated small victories, comforted each other in moments of sorrow, and nurtured the growth of their sons with patience and love. Maria had once believed that she would never know happiness again, but she discovered that resilience and trust could open doors she had thought permanently closed. Her sons became her pride, each one displaying strength, curiosity, and kindness. Maria taught them the lessons she had learned through hardship, compassion, courage, and the importance of perseverance. Wakasa guided them with wisdom, instilling in them a respect for nature, community, and family. Together, they became a unit stronger than any challenge that came their way. By the time the children were old enough to walk confidently and explore the surrounding plains, Maria had become a figure of quiet strength. She was no longer the woman who had been cast out and alone. She was a mother, a partner, and a leader within her small family. Each child, each day, was a reminder of her journey, from rejection and despair to love, fulfillment, and the creation of a life that was entirely her own. Maria understood now that her past pain had shaped her, but it did not define her. She had discovered her own strength, found trust in another human being, and built a family through courage and resilience. Each smile of her children, each lesson taught, each small act of care and protection was a victory against the loneliness and despair that had once threatened to consume her. Evenings were her favorite time. She would sit by the fire with Wakasa, the children playing nearby, listening to the sounds of the plains settling into night. She felt a deep sense of peace, the kind that comes not from perfection, but from knowing that one has faced hardship and emerged stronger.
Maria often thought about the twists of fate that had led her to this place.
Being cast out, though painful, had opened the door to a life far richer than she could have imagined. As she watched her son sleep, Maria felt a quiet gratitude. Life had been hard, but it had also been generous. She had learned to trust, to nurture, and to believe in the strength of family. And as the fire crackled and the night air settled around their small home, Maria knew that she had not only survived, she had truly begun to live. Life with Wakasa and the children was not without its challenges. Even as Maria's small family grew stronger, the world around them was unpredictable. Storms swept across the plains without warning, carrying rain and wind that tested the small shelter they had built. Food sometimes became scarce, forcing Maria and Wakasa to spend long days gathering, hunting, and finding ways to feed their growing sons. These were the moments that required patience, strength, and careful planning. Maria had faced despair before, but now she had more than herself to protect. One particularly harsh winter, the winds blew so fiercely that snow piled against the sides of their shelter, threatening to collapse it. Maria and Wakasa worked side by side, reinforcing the walls with extra reeds and logs, their hands raw and muscles aching. The boys, still young but eager to help, carried small branches and dry grass, learning lessons in resilience and teamwork under the careful guidance of their parents. Maria felt a quiet pride as she watched them, realizing that her children were not only learning survival skills but also the values of courage, responsibility, and care for one another. Even as they faced natural challenges, the outside world still carried whispers and judgment. Occasionally, travelers or neighboring villagers would pass through the plains. Some looked with curiosity, others with doubt, and a few with subtle scorn. Maria remembered the sharp words and harsh looks of her past life, and sometimes the memories of rejection made her chest tighten. But she had learned to stand firm, to focus on her family and the life she was building, rather than the opinions of those who had not walked in her shoes. Wakasa was a steady presence, always patient, always supportive. He taught the boys how to respect others even when respect was not returned, and how to defend themselves with skill and confidence, not violence. Maria learned from him as well, deepening her understanding of patience, strategy, and careful observation. Together they navigated the challenges of life on the plains, ensuring that the family remained safe and that the children were learning not only how to survive but how to thrive. The boys grew quickly, each showing signs of their own personality and strengths. The eldest was thoughtful and observant, often noticing patterns in the movement of animals or changes in the weather before his parents did. The second was energetic and curious, always eager to explore and ask questions, learning quickly from every experience. The youngest, though quiet, had a natural kindness and intuition that made him sensitive to the needs of others. Maria and Wakasa nurtured each child's strengths, encouraging them to develop skills that would serve them well as they matured. One summer, a dispute arose over a small piece of land near the river where Maria and Wakasa had planted some crops. A neighboring family claimed the area had once belonged to their ancestors and demanded that Maria and Wakasa leave. Maria felt a familiar tension rising, anger, fear, and a memory of the rejection she had suffered years before. But she did not panic. She spoke calmly, explaining that they had worked the land carefully and that the crops were for her children's survival. Wakasa supported her, standing beside her as they negotiated with the neighbors. Through patience, diplomacy, and mutual respect, they reached an agreement. The neighbors would share access to the land, and the children would learn how to work cooperatively with others. Maria realized that leadership required not only courage but also wisdom, and that sometimes strength was shown in restraint rather than confrontation. Her children watched closely, learning lessons about fairness, negotiation, and the importance of maintaining dignity even in difficult circumstances. The family continued to face tests of survival and character. Illness occasionally struck, and Maria had to care for her children through fevers and fatigue, using the knowledge she had learned from Wakasa and the land around them. She brewed teas from herbs, kept them warm, and monitored their conditions with careful attention. She grew more confident in her abilities, understanding that life would not always be easy, but that with vigilance, care, and determination her family could endure hardships together. Through these trials, Maria's relationship with Wakasa deepened. They were not only partners but teachers, mentors, and friends. They celebrated small victories, harvests, successful hunts, and the boys learning new skills. Each success, no matter how minor, became a cause for quiet celebration around the fire in the evenings. The laughter of the children echoed through the plains, a sound Maria had never thought she would hear again in her life. The boys' bond with each other grew stronger as well. They played together, learned together, and sometimes argued, as siblings do. But they always returned to one another, guided by the lessons of respect and care their parents had instilled. Maria found joy in watching them interact, seeing the kindness and strength that grew from their shared experiences. She realized that family was more than survival. It was love, learning, and the shared building of a life worth living. One autumn, a traveler came to their shelter. He was a scholar of the plains, someone who documented life among the various families and communities in the area. He marveled at the family's resilience, noting how Maria had transformed from a woman cast out and alone into a mother and leader who nurtured her children and maintained harmony with her environment. Maria listened quietly as he spoke, feeling a sense of pride she had never allowed herself to feel before. It was proof that her hard work, courage, and perseverance had created something enduring and respected. As the seasons changed, Maria reflected on her journey. She remembered the loneliness, the rejection, and the pain of being cast out by her husband. Each memory was like a stone she had carried for many years, but now, with Wakasa and her children, she felt as though she had laid many of those stones down. The past had shaped her, but it no longer defined her. She had transformed her life, building a family, a home, and a legacy of courage and love. Evenings remained her favorite time of day. She would sit by the fire watching her children play, listening to Wakasa speak softly of plans for the next day, or stories of his own youth. The sky above the plain shifted through shades of purple, orange, and gold, and Maria felt a deep sense of peace and gratitude. Life was not perfect. Storms, hardships, and challenges still came, but she now had the strength and experience to face them with confidence and resilience. Maria also began to teach her children the lessons she had learned from her own hardships. She spoke to them about perseverance, empathy, and the importance of respecting others. She told stories of her past, carefully, so that the lessons would be clear without instilling fear. She wanted her children to understand the value of resilience and to carry those values with them into their own lives. Wakasa supported her teachings, reinforcing the lessons through actions, guidance, and shared experiences in the field, the river, and the shelter. The family began to be noticed by others in the region. Travelers and neighboring families spoke of Maria and Wakasa's home as a place of skill, harmony, and respect. The boys' abilities, their kindness, and their intelligence became known, and Maria felt a quiet pride. She understood that her efforts were shaping not only her children but the broader community. Her life, once defined by rejection and despair, now radiated hope, strength, and resilience. Despite the challenges and occasional dangers of the plains, Maria and Wakasa's bond remained unshaken. They celebrated each day, small or large, as an opportunity to grow, learn, and protect their family. Their shared experiences forged a partnership that was stronger than any hardship, teaching the boys that strength, love, and respect could coexist, even in a world that sometimes seemed harsh and unforgiving. Maria knew that she had not only survived but had flourished. The life she had built with Wakasa and their sons was full of purpose, love, and achievement. She had transformed from a woman cast out and alone into a mother, a partner, and a figure of strength. Each day, she faced challenges with courage, guided by experience, wisdom, and the knowledge that her family's love and resilience would sustain them through whatever came next. And as the firelight flickered across their small home, Maria looked at her children, sleeping peacefully, and felt a quiet certainty. Life had tested her, shaped her, and guided her to this moment. She had endured rejection, fear, and uncertainty, but now she had love, family, and a home. The lessons she had learned, the importance of perseverance, the value of kindness, and the power of resilience, would live on in her children, carrying forward the strength of a family forged through hardship but held together by courage, trust, and love. The years passed steadily across the plains, and Maria watched as her children grew into strong, capable young boys. Each morning brought the same routines of tending the shelter, gathering food, and moving through the land with careful awareness, yet each day was unique, filled with small victories, new lessons, and moments of joy. Maria had once believed her life was over when she had been cast out by her husband. But now, with Wakasa and their children, she realized that life had only just begun. The boys were growing quickly, and Maria marveled at their strength, intelligence, and curiosity. The eldest had become thoughtful and perceptive, noticing patterns in nature that helped the family anticipate changes in weather or track animals for food. The second boy was adventurous, eager to explore the plains, and learning with speed and focus, while the youngest showed kindness and intuition that reminded Maria of the value of gentleness, even in a harsh world. She took great care to guide each of them according to their unique strengths, always teaching responsibility, respect, and compassion. Wakasa remained a steady presence beside her, teaching the boys skills in survival, hunting, and respect for the land. His lessons were both practical and moral, showing them that courage was not only about strength but about making the right decisions, protecting others, and remaining honorable even when faced with difficulty. Maria absorbed his teachings as well, growing more confident in her own abilities as a mother, partner, and leader. Together, they nurtured a family grounded in love, trust, and shared knowledge. Though life was peaceful, it was not without challenges. Harsh weather, limited resources, and occasional illness tested the family's resilience. Yet Maria and Wakasa faced each situation with patience and careful planning. Maria remembered the fear she had carried when she first wandered alone through the plains, and she realized how much she had grown. The fear of survival had been replaced with knowledge, courage, and the understanding that love and effort could overcome hardship. One spring morning, Maria noticed her children helping one another without instruction. They worked together to carry water, gather food, and care for their small home. The sight brought tears to her eyes, not tears of sadness, but of pride and deep gratitude. She had been alone and rejected once, but now, surrounded by her family, she felt a fulfillment that went beyond words. She understood that the strength of a family was not measured only in physical ability or survival skills, but in the bonds of trust, support, and shared purpose. The community around them began to recognize Maria and Wakasa's family. Travelers and neighboring families spoke of their skill, harmony, and resilience. Some came seeking advice on survival, while others brought stories of their own lives. Maria listened quietly, offering guidance when she could, always careful to remain humble yet confident in her knowledge and experience. She realized that respect could not be demanded. It was earned through consistent effort, wisdom, and integrity. As the boys continued to grow, Maria saw them develop qualities that reflected both her and Wakasa. The eldest displayed sharp insight and the ability to think ahead. The second showed courage and a willingness to explore new opportunities, and the youngest carried a gentle empathy that made him sensitive to the needs of others. Maria nurtured these qualities through stories, guidance, and encouragement, ensuring that each child felt valued for who he was, rather than pressured to conform to expectations. Evenings became her favorite moments of reflection. She would sit by the fire with Wakasa, watching the children play or listen intently to stories. The plains stretched before them, bathed in the golden light of sunset, and Maria felt a profound sense of peace. She thought about her past, the years of loneliness, the despair of rejection, and the uncertainty that had once consumed her. She recognized that each difficult experience had prepared her for this life, for the family she now cherished, and for the person she had become. One day, As the boys were exploring the riverbank, Maria called them over. She spoke of the journey that had brought them to this place, carefully sharing her story of rejection, hardship, and discovery. She told them how she had been cast out of her home, alone and fearful, and how she had eventually found LAKOTA, who had guided her to safety and trust. She explained that life sometimes brought hardship, but it also offered opportunities for growth, love, and fulfillment. The boys listened intently, their eyes wide with understanding, absorbing the lessons she imparted. LAKOTA added his perspective, emphasizing the importance of honor, respect, and courage. He spoke of the land, the animals, and the community, teaching the boys that every action had consequences and that integrity mattered above all else. Maria felt a quiet pride as she watched her sons absorb these teachings. They were becoming men who understood responsibility, empathy, and the value of hard work. She realized that her efforts, combined with LAKOTA's guidance, were shaping a legacy that would last beyond their own lives. The years continued, and the boys matured into capable, confident young men. Each of them carried the lessons of their parents, showing skill, respect, and kindness in all they did. Maria watched them interact with the world around them, seeing the values she had instilled take root and flourish. Bayface. She marveled at their strength, not only physical but emotional and moral. They had become a reflection of her resilience and LAKOTA's wisdom, a living testament to the life they had built together. Maria often reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the despair of being cast out, the fear of survival, and the uncertainty that had once defined her days. But she also remembered the small acts of kindness, the trust she had found in LAKOTA, and the strength she had discovered within herself. Life had not been easy, but it had been generous in unexpected ways. Through courage, resilience, and love, she had created a life richer than she had ever imagined. The family's home remained simple, yet it was full of warmth, laughter, and purpose. Maria and LAKOTA worked together to ensure that their children had everything they needed, not only for survival but to grow into capable, responsible, and compassionate individuals. They celebrated small victories, the harvest, a successful hunt, or the boys learning a new skill, with joy and gratitude. Every success reinforced the bonds between them and reminded Maria of the value of perseverance and dedication. As the sun set each evening, Maria would sit by the fire holding a blanket over her shoulders and watching her children. The sound of their laughter, the quiet conversations with LAKOTA, and the gentle breeze across the plains filled her with a sense of fulfillment she had never thought possible. She realized that the pain of her past had led her to this moment, and that the rejection she had once feared had opened the door to a life full of love, family, and purpose. Maria also began to share her story with the broader community, carefully teaching others the lessons she had learned. She spoke to travelers, young mothers, and anyone willing to listen about resilience, trust, and the importance of nurturing family. She shared practical skills for survival on the plains, for raising children with care and compassion, and for maintaining harmony within one's household. People came to respect her not only for her knowledge, but also for the strength she had demonstrated in creating a life that honored her past while embracing the present. Through it all, Maria maintained a quiet humility. She knew that life was not without challenges, and she did not claim to have all the answers, but she understood the value of courage, patience, and compassion. She saw these qualities reflected in her children and LAKOTA, and she knew that their shared experiences had created a foundation that would endure. Together, they had transformed a story of rejection and hardship into one of love, strength, and legacy. The boys continued to grow, learning to fish, hunt, and respect the land. They helped each other, shared responsibilities, and learned the importance of cooperation. Maria encouraged them to think critically, to make their own decisions, and to take responsibility for their actions. She celebrated their successes, guided them through failures, and ensured that each child knew he was valued and loved. Through her teachings, she passed on not only skills for survival but also the wisdom that had carried her through her darkest days. Years later, Maria would watch her sons venture further into the plains, confident and capable, knowing they carried with them the lessons of resilience, compassion, and courage. She reflected on her own journey, the pain of being cast out, the uncertainty of her early days, and the trust she had found in Wakasa, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life had tested her, shaped her, and ultimately guided her to this fulfilling existence. Maria's heart was full as she considered the family she had built. She had been alone and rejected once, but through courage, patience, and love, she had created a home filled with laughter, learning, and trust. Her sons were her living legacy, embodying the strength and values she and Wakasa had nurtured. And as she sat by the fire each evening, watching the sun set over the plains, Maria knew that she had not only survived, but had truly lived. The journey had been long, the hardships many, but Maria had discovered the power of resilience, the importance of love, and the strength of family. She understood now that life's greatest rewards often came after the deepest trials, and that hope, once found, could lead to a future brighter than anything she had imagined. Her story was one of courage, transformation, and the enduring power of trust and compassion. A story that would live on not only in her children, but in the lessons she had shared with all who would listen.